Hello, my name is Mark Baines, and welcome to Training Made Fun's description of the job of a personal trainer. And as a personal trainer, a certified personal trainer, there are four basic ideas that is part of the job of being a successful, first of all, and a professional personal trainer. It's not just a matter of performing exercise and being good at exercise. You have to know exactly what the person needs most, let alone what they would like to do. And the first thing we need to do is to determine what that is by assessing that particular person, determining specifically what they've been doing, what they want to do, what makes the most sense for us to do going forward. And then from those assessments which we perform, we can then design a more appropriate, safe, efficient, and effective program. Without proper assessments, we can't do that. Training is random, training is uncertain, training is just a matter of throwing a bunch of exercises at someone, and that is not the job of a personal trainer. Instruction should be, of course, based upon that design. So time must be taken after assessing, which is generally speaking at least an hour session, perhaps more in some situations, designing the program on a day-to-day basis, taking 10 to 15 minutes every single time, planning out a program before actually going through and actually instructing that particular program. It's very common for personal trainers to simply go through a training session without taking any time to plan anything, maybe having some rough ideas in their head exactly what they want to do with a particular client, but not specifically writing it down. And that's a major mistake. Can you imagine telling someone that if I planned something out, that would be about my A game? That'd be the best I could give you as far as planning, preparing for your success. However, I'm not going to plan and prepare for that. I'm going to just come show up and do the best that I can, which is essentially my D game. I'm going to give you my D game. So are you okay with paying $70, $80, $90, $100 or more, or even $50 an hour for that type of activity, for someone just to come show up and make it up as I go? Are you okay with that? Willing to bet that client is either going to be very confused and uncertain whether they want to go forward with this program, or doubt whether this particular personal trainer is worth the time and effort given. And to be fair, they deserve more than that from us. Our job is to take the time to prepare. It is not easy. 10 to 15 minutes per person. If you have 6, 8, 10 sessions a day, that's an extra hour, hour and a half, perhaps even 2 hours for some people, depending. It's a lot of time to expect. At the same time, it's what should be expected, considering we're talking about the training of individuals, not the training of just a generality of someone. This person has specific needs based upon specific situations, specific background, and specific movement capabilities, let alone specific goals that might be different than someone else's, and their capabilities are different, so we have to train differently. We have to take the time to plan this out. They deserve it, and we should be putting in the time. That said, that instruction, when we actually connect with our individual that we're training, or a group, if we're training a group, we have to make sure we continually look back at that particular plan each day, taking notes between each set. That's the rest times between sets. That doesn't belong to the personal trainer and the client to be talking. The client can talk all they want, or the client can be taking a break or getting some water or going to grab dumbbells or something along those lines. The trainer's job is to take notes during that time frame, to ask questions perhaps, but certainly to be noting everything that happened during that training session or set that we just had. Did the shoulder bother them? Is one shoulder rising higher than the other one? Do they continue to have difficulty left versus right? Does it seem like the person's struggling with the weight? Does it seem like compared to last time they're actually performing better? How do we know if we just mark down a weight, sets, and reps if the person's actually getting better? We have to track a lot more data during that set, during each session throughout. And of course, reassessing every few weeks and coming back and reassessing that particular individual to see how changes have been made. Starting first and foremost with the concept of assessment. When you assess, we're determining individual capabilities and limitations. Specifically, what is the person capable of doing and what are they limited by? Perhaps their basic capability is performing a basic bodyweight squat with body weight. Limitation would be the absolute maximum amount of load someone could lift at that same range of motion, same path of motion, same exact motion, adding weight to them. If they change significantly, body weight versus adding load, then whatever load we gave them is too much. If they perform a given motion in space, performing a simple horizontal adduction with elbow extension, which is essentially a chest press, right? At that horizontal plane for the shoulder and the sagittal plane for the elbow. For that basic action, if they can perform it very, very nicely in free space, then we give them a weight, and it's not so nice. It doesn't look as smooth. It doesn't look as fluid. They can't achieve the same range of motion. They have the path is off a little bit. They're somehow arcing their spine. They're rounding their back. Their head is moving, coming forward. One arm is moving forward more than the other, or one arm moves faster than the other one does. Anything along the lines of looking different than it did unloaded. Whatever we have as a load or exercise application is not ideal for this person right now and going to create more harm than good. So we have to be more conscious of specifically what someone's capabilities are, and that is why. And it's very common for people to say to push your limits. What they're really saying is we want to save improvement. Unfortunately, the concept of pushing your limits is often taken to be pushing to the nth degree of whatever the person could possibly handle, when the whole idea is to figure out what you've been doing and take one step farther than that, or further if you will, so the person does a little bit more than they're used to doing. Not a big gigantic jump. The body's very intelligent. It will try very hard to return back to its normal state, whether it has to actually hurt you to tell you that's the wrong thing for you to do by actually any number of factors of creating inflammation, making it hard for you, not so much intentionally making it hard for you, but giving you a difficult time and trying to cope with particular stress. It's basically telling you that whatever you're doing is not ideal. That's why you're stiff. That's why you're sore. That's why you're not moving well after those programming days. It's not that that programming is ideal, it's that it's not ideal. That said, no one said that was easy. It's not easy at all. But the intention is to try to make the training appropriate, to make it the right level so the person continues to grow, not just simply challenges someone at random. The baseline for comparison, on numerous factors, depending on the assessments we're talking about. When we get into the assessment specifically, we'll get into specific guidelines of what we're comparing, what we're looking to compare between a squat, a push-up, a plank, a pull-down or pull-up, or a machine chest press instead of a push-up in some cases. If they can't do a plank, doing a standing a cable hold or a band hold while the trainer walks around in a semicircle to challenge their basis of support to see if they actually can maintain stability. It's not intended to throw them off, it's intended to see what they can do while still maintaining stability. There's all sorts of numbers of assessments we could perform. We have a few that we specifically recommend and highly recommend. They work. There are all sorts of things that can work. And if we find things that work real well for the individual we're working with, see if we can see some real significant change that improves them, they move better, they're stronger, they feel better, and it's not increasing risk unnecessarily, we may have found some possibility for assessment, let alone possibility for future training. Okay. That said, the whole goal is to discover their basic goals, what they want, what do they want to accomplish. It's very common for most individual clients to want weight loss. They want a slimmer stomach. They want to have well-defined muscles. They want to be able to see their abs. The guys want to have larger arms, larger chest, but of course be able to see the muscles and the contours, whereas the women oftentimes want to have also the lean abs, but lean muscle. They're worried about the flab coming off the bottom of their arms. They're worried about want to be tighter in the legs, right? That's not true of every single male or woman, or male or female. It's different for every individual client, which is why we have to ask the questions, because we don't know until we ask. Once we've properly assessed our clients, so we better understand not just the basic sciences, which is an ongoing idea that we constantly are evaluating and looking over our own information that we need to understand as it comes to physiology, biomechanics, kinesiology. It's an ongoing process. Every trainer must do this. And then we actually determine the appropriate assessments for our clients, all depending upon our personal experience with our clientele we're currently training and the individual needs of a given population. Then, of course, we determine the client's individual capabilities and limitations through those assessments. And, of course, we're constantly asking what their goals are and determining basic needs based upon what we evaluate from the assessments. It's a big job. And then, and only then, can we properly design a program. At that point, what we're worried about making sure we can do is to make sure we take that information initially from the very first assessment, and then from there, therefore, then going on with that, for every time we train that client with those assessments, with a new program we design for each given day, which won't change dramatically and shouldn't change dramatically, should have a clear plan or idea in mind for the first few weeks, which should be fairly consistent. There'll be some small variations depending upon response, but generally speaking, a lot of our programming will be somewhat similar through the first few weeks, with the primary focus being towards coordination and overall movement control and basic endurance and flexibility. That said, that will move from there every few weeks, right? That's program design. However, that being said, we make sure we design based upon the sciences, which again is going to come back to physiology, biomechanics, basic underlyings of kinesiology. We have to not be doing it based upon our anecdotal evidence, which is our personal experience. Too often, personal trainers design programs based on the fact that they were formerly track athlete or a basketball player or a wrestler or football player, or just in their physical education experience in high school, junior high, and beyond that, or just the fact they've actually watched YouTube videos or anything like that, and they found there's certain things they like, which is great. However, that can only be utilized with your clients if it's first backed by science. You can scientifically rationalize why a specific joint motion should occur, how it should be occurring, how it affects the joint, how it affects the muscles, how it affects connective tissue, how it affects physiologically a person, and then specifically how it's important for the particular person we're training. That's the important details that a trainer must go through before giving any exercise to a client to make sure it's safe, efficient, and effective as much as possible, because there's only so much you can do, but as much as possible for our clients. Science first. Anecdotal evidence is not the way we want to approach exercise. We don't want to say, how do I fit an exercise into my program? We want to figure out what our client needs based on our assessments, and then know which exercises and motions are going to be most appropriate, or at least what motions are appropriate. Then we'll determine what exercises we're going to utilize. And of course, we need to have a plan every single session for our client, which specifically means, once again, that we to spend 10 to 15 minutes at least per client session for planning it out. Yep, it takes time, and that's what our clients deserve, and that's what every trainer should be doing. Okay? That said, moving to instruction. The instruction day today, once we have a good design of anywhere between a handful of exercises to 10 to 15 or more exercises, all depending on the person's goals on a given day, their capabilities, and where they are in a given training year for their current capabilities and limitations, right? We're going to base those principles of design, or our day-to-day instruction, rather, of the design on biomechanics and kinesiology. Specifically, we have to understand movement. That's kinesiology, and we have to understand how forces impact motion. And it's fine that if you bring your arm across in front of you, you think of that being pectoralis major doing the work. However, that's only the specific benefit to the pectoralis major if you understand that every motion must directly be opposed, or every motion you engage in strength training must be directly opposite the external resistance. So whatever it is you're fighting against, gravity in free space, or the machine, or a cable, or a band, or whatever you're fighting against, so to speak, to get the benefit from the exercise, must be direct opposition to your motion to maximize the benefit to the motion and to minimize risk. Make sure you have a clear idea of what you expect to see before you actually do it. Don't be surprised when your client can't squat properly, or they can't do a nice looking push-up or a nice plank. It's real simple. If they haven't done it before, it's going to be difficult for them to do. Rather than worrying about every independent muscular action the person is unable to properly engage, whether they can properly engage their glutes, or properly engage their lats, or properly engage muscles and stabilizing muscles of the ankle, is all primarily dependent upon whether the person's actually engaged this exercise with any regularity. It's not just a matter of, well, they don't move well, we have to work on isolating this particular muscle or action. That might necessarily be wrong, but for first and foremost, you need to look at the idea of how much exercise this person's getting as a whole, and to train the specific movements the person needs, rather than worry about specific muscles. If you train the proper movements, you get the right muscles. If you train the proper muscles, you don't necessarily get the right movements. That should be enough right there. That said, in order to teach each motion properly, to make sure they do get proper motion, it wouldn't be a bad idea to see someone perform the motion first to see what they can do. The probability is, if the person is used to exercising regularly, and you let them just perform an exercise without first breaking down exactly what you want from the exercise, it's going to be very difficult for you to make changes without becoming antagonistic with your potential client or client. They're going to say, what's wrong with what I just did? Is there something wrong that I was doing? Why is your way better? You don't want to get into that conversation. So we want to first show them what we want them to do, not even engage what they do. They may even say, as we start to explain what we want them to do, well, when I do it, I normally do this. Just say, what I'd like you to do right now is to try it like this. That way you're not negating what they do. You're not saying anything negative about what they're normally doing. Just that this is the way we want to do it right now. This is the goal today. Okay? So first of all, we communicate using this idea of VAK, which is visual, auditory, kinesthetic. Visually, we show the person the way we want them to perform the exercise, exactly how we want them to do it. Okay, and then we have the person get in there, and as they're doing it, of course, after we've both visually shown them and auditorily told them what we want them to do, talking technique, right? Then they get in there and do the exercise, and as they're doing the exercise, after we've assessed that they have the proper capability of performing this motion, meaning in free space, watching them perform the motion before they grab any load, grab the handle of a machine, or grab the cable handle, or a dumbbell, they should be able to perform that motion in free space. If they can't make it look nice in free space, it's not going to look good under load. Okay? Well, not to mention the negative drawbacks doing that if they don't have proper motion. Once they start performing the motion, If the person is seated, standing in any way, or kneeling, not lying down, if they're in any way capable of seeing out in front of them, then you want to be standing in a position not directly in front of them, but in a way that they can actually see you mimicking the motion, mimicking the speed, the tempo of motion, and the proper motion itself, the starting point, the ending point, as you're describing it. By them being able to see you doing it still, not just from you doing it before they start to exercise, but during the exercise itself. With them being able to watch you, their technique will pick up dramatically in terms of overall effectiveness and efficiency. You can do it perhaps maybe through the whole set or just for a few reps of them doing it, and then you go back and just show them a couple things with putting your hands on them, telling them start here, stop there, aim toward my hand, little visual cues that way as well. But you want to be as visual as possible the entire time, meaning giving them something to look at in terms of what they should be doing, not just watching themselves, which they need to do as well. So that's why you don't want to stand directly in front of them if they're looking into a mirror specifically. If they have no mirror, even more important, why you need to mimic the motion so they understand what's happening and what's not happening that should be happening. Auditorily also, as you're explaining technique, if you find yourself explaining too much in technique, where you're trying to say for the third or fourth time the same thing about dropping the shoulder down, dropping the shoulder down, dropping the shoulder down, anything like that. If you have to repeat it more than twice, the exercise itself is either the load is too heavy, the motion itself they're incapable of performing, or the range of motion is too much range of motion, in which case you slow them down, you decrease the load, you decrease the range of motion, any one or all three of those particular variables. If that doesn't work, you have the wrong exercise at this point in time. You need to figure out a better motion for the person to be engaging. And of course, auditorily, if technique is good, then you're going to motivation. You shouldn't be quiet during a given set. If you're quiet during the set, we know one of two things. Either you've not given proper mindset to what the goal of this exercise actually is, other than this is a good exercise. That's the number one mistake, why you might have nothing to say during the set. Secondly, it's because you've mentally checked out. You're not watching the person perform the exercise. You're not being clear on path of motion, range of motion, stopping and starting point, tempo of motion, position of spine, position of joints involved in the exercise, position of joints throughout the rest of the body, what's actually going on during this exercise, what they should be feeling, how it should feel. There's plenty of things to talk about. If you're finding you have nothing to talk about, you probably haven't given enough thought, again, or you're drifting off. Bring yourself back, get back and re-engage. You might want to start by moving, not standing in one place while you're observing, which is always a good idea as well. And that said, the final point, kinesthetic, has to do with feel. They're going to get the feel by doing the exercise. You want to assist that feel by putting your hands on them to show them where the starting point is, where the stopping point is, occasionally putting, say, either fist or open palm or fingers very briefly for a moment on their body where you want them to be pushing toward or where they should be feeling it. You need to be comfortable with doing that or don't do it at all. If you're not comfortable putting hands on your client, don't do it. And to make sure you're always in vision, they can always see you within their vision when you perform that hands-on activity, okay? And then finally, when you reassess, you micro-assess. Every rep, every set is an assessment. We're not going to count reps because you can't coach, you can't train while you're counting reps. You're going for time and you're maintaining certain tempo, you'll get the appropriate number of reps. What's the right amount of time? That depends on the goal, depends on the program design, to determining what specifically through energy systems and your understanding of that and your understanding of specific proper motions to engage the proper work period and rest period. That's not random, it's not coming through reading a book, it's through understanding the science. And that said, every rep of every set is an assessment. There's always something to write down. We wouldn't expect you to be writing something down during the set itself, but be fully prepared once that set ends to take that 30 to 45 second, 60-second break to be writing something down while also still talking with your client. You got to get really good at dual activity, being able to talk to them while writing down and taking notes specifically about what load they lifted, what their speed was, if you want to say it was too fast, too slow, or whatever it was. Make sure they got proper range of motion, write down if they didn't. If something was improper with their joint motion, write that down. The duration of time the person engaged that motion for. All those things are program design factors, okay? And of course, macro assessing, and including also heart rate and RPE, which we'll talk about in program design as well. When you macro assess, comparing the current abilities to the current assessment, remind them, hey, maybe you're not happy just yet with how far along you've gone. You haven't lost as many pounds as you'd like, or your abs aren't looking like you want them to, or you're not getting the size you wanted. Whatever the goal is, say, I get it. You're frustrated a little bit there. I would be as well. I often frustrated with my own goals, wanted to get farther along than I currently am. It's a normal thing. It's okay to be a little frustrated, but you also have to expect that things take time. Then you also need to understand about physiology to be able to explain to them how long it should take for muscle hypertrophy to take place, how long it should take for, generally speaking, to see a significant change in metabolism, let alone morphology, how they look, their size, their shape. That is not an overnight thing. Generally speaking, we're expecting for someone who has not done something before, taking months, not weeks, not days, but months. Unless they're willing to engage 2 or 3 hours per day, every day, we can see something big happening in a couple months. Otherwise, that's not going to happen. And the last thing you want them to do is to not eat so they can start being lighter. We want to not engage that behavior. So we want to not let them get too carried away with expecting too much results too soon. And evaluate their abilities every 4 to 8 weeks. That's about when the nervous system and the endocrine system start to become more adapted to a particular stress. You're able to move better. You should be, assuming you're performing the proper motions and performing at the right level, frequency-wise, intensity-wise, time and attention-wise, and the right tool you're using, let alone the right rest, fitter principles, right? If you're doing that, theoretically, you should have a better adaptation in the first 4 to 8 weeks. So when you reassess and perform that squat assessment, perform that push strength, pull strength, lower body strength, core strength assessments, posture assessments, balance assessments, all those basic things that we will cover in our assessments. And then you may want to choose to add to that. We'd really prefer it, if you can, to not take away, but to add. Increase if you feel there's something else you think you need to be assessing, rather than taking away, unless you've found that for your particular individual, there's something specific that that client needs, then so be it, based on your knowledge of science and your knowledge of experience as a trainer. The experience of a trainer does not trump the science. With that said, that's the basics of assessments, and from that, you can move on to understanding how to get out there and get clients. But that's your job. You do that part well, the actual business of getting clients, it's going to be a whole lot easier.